Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasts.
Welcome to Creepy Tapas,
where we do the opposite of deep dives and bring you tiny tastes of terror connected by a common ingredient.
True stories to haunt and chill you and the pop culture they inspired.
Or at least the movies and books that remind us of them.
Join us as we descend into darkness,
beginning with the lighter side of our weekly topic,
and wrapping with a full dark, no stars account of terror, madness, murder, and more. It's Creepy Tapas, y'all.
Hi, this is Dana, host of the Crime Diner podcast on the Darkcast Network. On my show, I talk about historical crimes, so you can imagine my tastes are a little on the darker side. That's why when I'm looking for a gift for a spooky, loving friend or something unique for myself, I go online and shop at Batwings and Butterflies. Batwings and Butterflies is an independent creator-owned boutique of hand-knit creations. Some are wild, some are dark, but all are sure to please even the hardest person to shop for. You'll find baby Baphomets, giant stuffed tarantulas, blankets, plant hangers, water pipe cozies, and so much more. All items are original works of art by a talented artisan. Support small businesses and order your one-of-a-kind creation today. Find Batwings and Butterflies at batwingsandbutterflies.bigcartel.com or on Instagram at batwingsandbutterflies. When I saw these adorable baby Baphomets, I got so excited because I just think they're so cute and we love a baby demon. To get 20% off your first purchase at Batwings and Butterflies, type in the code DARKCAST20 at checkout.
Hiya, I'm your best friend and your worst influence, and I plan to carry on this tradition, so enjoy me. Hey there, Rainbow Warriors. Welcome to Beyond the Rainbow, True Crimes of the LGBTQ+. I'm your host, CJ. I'm on the socials just about everywhere as Rainbow Crimes or Darkcast Network. Speaking of Darkcast, check out Darkcast Network's website with its shiny new domain. The new link is darkcastnetwork.com. And when you go, see who was chosen to be January's brightest show for the network. A big hello and shout out to my incredible patrons on Patreon. I washed your unicorns and brushed them all down well. They'll be ready for our next ride and exclusive story at the end of the month. Should you like a unicorn at my Seabree Studio stables named and taken care of for you? Become a patron! At the $5 unicorn level, not only will you have a unicorn named in your honor, but you'll get ad-free episodes, early release episodes, and one extra exclusive episode at the end of every month. Just when you think you've ran out of everything at the end of the month, here comes CJ with an extra episode not shared here on the regular show. I'll leave a link in my show notes to my Patreon account. Can we get just a teensy bit political real quick? You know how much I love politics.
What?
So, this lady down the street, she's really friendly, but she's a Trumper. So I'm really not too close to her. And she's super religious. But if it weren't for her politics, we might actually have a good friendship. We are cordial to each other. She knows I'm a lesbian, and she actually has an older sister who's a lesbian, but they don't talk really. The other day, she caught me on a walk and started to tell me all the good Trump did while he was in power. How our stocks went up, and that's just wonderful for her. She also started to tell me about the rate of unemployment going down. And after I went home and began to think about this particular thing she stated, if unemployment went down, wasn't that due to COVID and a lot of jobs that dealt directly with the people had to hire because employees quit? I wish I had thought more into it sooner to ask her about that, but of course I didn't. All I could respond was, I just don't like the grabber by the pussy past president. She then asked me if I liked Biden. I told her I honestly really don't care for most politicians, and that seemed to shut her up. I really just don't understand the love Trumpers have with him. I don't get why they can't see he's a criminal who motivates murder. Remember January 6, 2021, the storming of the Capitol? Don't tell me he wasn't behind it. He couldn't even concede defeat to Biden. The man's delusional. So if you just happen to be a Trumper listening to this, which I find highly doubtful, but not impossible, please DM me and explain why you think he's so wonderful and why you think he deserves a second term as president. I'm thoroughly interested to find out answers as to why. Even my very Republican sister who voted for Trump the first go-round, she now says, "Oh, he's an idiot. He won't get my vote again." At least she woke up. Anyway, I'm sure that was way too much time talking about politics, so let's get into our case. About a year ago, I did 2 episodes called Voices of Darkcast, Victims of Hate, and I had hosts of various Darkcast shows cover a wide variety of short cases for me. One of the cases was that of Catherine Janness's murder in Atlanta. Then, months later, I expanded the case, and I covered it on a show called Beyond Bizarre Podcast. I have never shared this case directly with you, my warriors, and I've wanted to. So this episode, I'm gonna do it. I will also have a new true crime quickie for you at the end. All my life, I've always struggled with cases of animal cruelty and animals dying. I cried during Bambi, and that's a freaking cartoon. And I could never even watch Old Yeller Through or Where the Red Fern Grows because of the doggies dying. This case will have the death of a pet dog, but I'm going to glaze over it as quickly as possible when I can. And I'm going to give very little detail about the dog's death. Also, this case still has no resolution. It's been over a year and nada. Last year in January, a whole year ago, the Atlanta police were saying they were close to solving the case. There's still a lot of speculation from law enforcement and from the public in general, and I'm going to talk a little about that. And while some might not agree with me, I think it's important to speculate, because you're throwing theories out there. They might all be bullshit and they might all be wrong, but you're at least getting ideas out there and getting brains working. It's important to communicate about these cases. As long as we're only getting the ideas out there in the universe without making false accusations. Maybe it'll even jog the memory of someone who saw something. If you've never lived in the southern part of the United States, let me tell you a little bit about the summer heat. It's wet and sticky. It feels like being dipped in flavorless syrup and laid out in the sun to crisp up. But you just never crisp. You stay sticky damp all day long. It's nearly unbearable to be outside for too long, and if your air conditioner is broken, or worse, you don't have any, you're pretty much screwed. On the positive side, my skin never looked healthier. And it felt like I was just sweating the weight off when I lived in Louisiana. I wasn't. It just felt like I was. It was a warm 73 degrees just before midnight on July 28th, 2021 in Atlanta, Georgia. And that's pretty hot for that time of night if you're not used to it. 40-year-old Katie Janness, a bartender and talented musician, she had just gotten home from her shift at work. It was her nightly routine to take her dogs for a walk through Piedmont Park after work. She changed into a black pair of pants and a black t-shirt, and then she put one of the dog's collars and leash on. She decided only to take Bowie, and I'm not sure why. But Bowie was the one that got to go. Katie's girlfriend of 6 years, Emma, was still working at a nearby restaurant. And this is one of those cases, you see, where there's discrepancies in the couple's title. Some media refer to Katie and Emma as girlfriends. Others, they were fiancés. And still others call them each other's wives. I don't know how important this detail is or could be, but in Emma's 911 emergency call to police dispatch, she refers to Katie as her girlfriend. So I think that's what we'll call them. The couple lived about a block from Piedmont Park in Atlanta, and this has been touted one of the safest parks in the United States. Piedmont Park is a picturesque 185-acre park featuring walking and jogging paths, tennis courts, 2 ponds, a public swimming pool, and a dog park. Many fun festivities are held at this park, including concerts and Atlanta's Pride events. The park's hours of operation are 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. daily, although the park seems to be somewhat active after hours as well. Very close to Piedmont Park are 4 corner crosswalks that are painted with the pride flag. This would be at 10th Street and Piedmont Avenue Northeast, where the Flying Biscuit Cafe resides. And maybe a block away is the entrance to Piedmont Park. The park usually has 30 operational CCTV cameras in strategic places, but for whatever reasons, the night of July 28, 2021, 9 of those cameras were not working. A little after 11:30 p.m. is when Katie took the walk with Bowie, their dog, a beautiful pit bull. Many people are frightened by pit bulls. To be honest, some of the best dogs I've ever had were pits. They're fiercely loyal to their owners, and so many are not as savage or menacing as they might appear. I know a lot has to do with how they're raised. Bowie was a good boy, and a good walking buddy for Katie. By all accounts, Katie and Bowie should have been safe that night. They were safe all the other nights they had their walks. Their route took them by the restaurant Emma worked at for a quick hello. Katie said, "I'm just out walking Bowie and then we're heading home." And that was the last time Emma would see Katie and Bowie alive. A CCTV camera near the park seemed to pick up the last footage of Katie as she walked Bowie across the Pride Crosswalk intersection towards Piedmont Park at 12:09 a.m. Between this time and the time when Katie and Bowie's bodies were discovered around 1 a.m., 7 other people were seen on working CCTV cameras leaving various entrances and exits of the park. Police asked for all the potential witnesses on camera to come in for an interview. I only know of one that actually has come in, and that was a jogger that was seen on camera leaving the park. When Emma's shift ended at midnight, she helped close up the restaurant and would hop on her bicycle and head home to Katie and the 2 dogs. They were her family, but only one of the dogs was there. And this was weird because Katie and Bowie should have been home by now. So Emma texted Katie, "Hey, where are you guys?" There was no answer. After several more texts left unanswered, Emma started to get kind of worried, so she checked Katie's location on her phone app. The ping showed Katie at the entrance of Piedmont Park, and she didn't seem to be moving anywhere. Her phone just sat there minute after minute after minute, even with Emma refreshing the location. Emma thought, Katie either found someone she knew and has stopped to talk to them, or maybe she dropped her phone. At a little before 1 o'clock, when she still couldn't get Katie on her phone, Emma hopped on her bicycle. She headed in the direction of Piedmont Park where Katie's phone was pinging. The lighting after the 10th Street and Charles Allen Drive entrance into the park was pretty dark at night. Even if the lights were operating, it was still very dim. At first, Emma thought she saw the shadow of a trash bag. But as she started to get a little closer, she could see that it was Bowie laying on his side, about 50 yards from the entrance inside the park. She immediately thought he'd been hit by a car and dragged himself into the park. Laying about 100 feet from Bowie was Katie. As Emma got closer, she saw a very bloody Katie. She got off her bike, she dropped it onto the cement. She felt Katie's face and she went to feel for a pulse on Katie. But there was no pulse. Emma knew Katie was dead. She could see her throat had been slashed and there was so much blood. Emma ran towards the park entrance and then across the street to get near some lights and hopefully safety. She fumbled for her cell phone and she frantically called 911. The next few minutes of Emma's call would fall under a lot of scrutiny by many. The call is public knowledge. In it, Emma says, "I'm at the entrance of Piedmont Park. I was searching for my girlfriend because I couldn't find her. She's dead. She's here at Piedmont Park. Please help." To many observers who have listened to Emma's call to dispatch, they think she sounded too calm, too callous. and too removed from any feelings about Katie. At one point, Emma exclaims, "Oh my God, she's dead! Dead!" Maybe this is how Emma reacts in a crisis. She's heard saying to a bystander as the bystanders started to gather, "Did you see that? That's my fucking girlfriend." After the medical examiner inspected Katie's body, it was determined to have over 50 stab wounds. Some of them were defensive wounds to her arms and hands. 15 of the stab wounds were to Katie's face. Each of her breasts had been stabbed. She was stabbed in her throat several times, and a stab wound to her back went all the way through, damaging her heart and her left lung. Body parts of Katie's were cut off, and I'm not sure exactly which parts. Most likely it was fingers or toes, but those parts cannot be found. The letters F-A-T were carved into her torso. Early on in the reporting of Katie's murder, a news station in Atlanta claimed that the letters carved were F-A-G, and they said that the murder was definitely hate-motivated because Katie was a lesbian. In my opinion, that wasn't terribly responsible journalism. Hello, there's a big difference between a G and a T. And to this day, we still don't know the motive. Katie's cause of death? Sharp force injuries to her face, neck, breast, torsos, and back. Katie bled out from her stab wounds, all of which really seems to be a passionate crime, or at least very personal. And this is yet another neon arrow pointing at Katie's girlfriend Emma. To top it off, a GoFundMe account was set up in honor of Katie. It raised over $79,000. Some of it was used for Katie's funeral expenses, and a big chunk of it was used by Emma. Unfortunately, this also adds to her suspicion factor. But there's a reason why Emma needed the money. Since Katie's murder, Emma couldn't even go near Piedmont Park without being accosted by someone who believes she's the one that murdered Katie and Bowie. Due to multiple death threats, Emma had to quit her job, and she moved from the place she shared with Katie and the dogs. She took some of that money and she paid bills and bought a condo. The money was supposed to go to a reward fund to find Katie's killer. Some of those who donated feel duped by Emma. But all the evidence the public seems to think they have against Emma is circumstantial at best, and I don't believe any of it would hold up in court. But stranger things have happened. Did she say or act inappropriately on her call to 911? According to some people, she was just too calm. But we must remember the human psyche is weird. We all act differently under duress. I heard her 911 call, and I thought that Emma sounded more like someone in shock. Did her timing using the GoFundMe money suck? Absolutely. But if my life was being threatened and in danger, I might have used the money to get out too. Should she have at least put some of the money towards the reward fund? Well, of course she should have. That was the purpose behind it. What we need to remember, though, is Emma lost her partner of 6 years, and her dog. Emma was also at work until at least midnight. I'm almost certain the Atlanta PD confirmed Emma's alibi of being at work till midnight. Katie was seen crossing the Pride crosswalk on camera with Bowie around 12:09 a.m. Emma would have had to left work, ride her bike into the park and ambush Bowie and Katie, kill them both without being seen, and get the fuck out of there. I don't believe there's any footage showing Emma riding or walking into Piedmont Park between 12:09 and 1 a.m. This would be a 51-minute time span. 51 minutes is enough time to kill someone, definitely, but Emma? Emma with no history of killing anybody before? 50 stab wounds is a lot of work, and it would take a lot of energy. Could Emma, who had worked all day in a busy restaurant, then went to Piedmont Park undetected, snuck up on her girlfriend and their dog and murdered them both with such overkill and such hatred, and then ran out of the park, ditched the murder weapon, ditched Katie's body parts, went home drenched in blood without anyone noticing, cleaned up, texted Katie's phone, and came back 51 minutes later to call police dispatch? I'm sure it's possible. She would have had enough time to go home if she had left her work exactly at midnight, or very close thereafter. She would have had enough time to go home, shower, and change, and go back to the crime scene to call 911. But I have to believe Emma would likely have some cuts on her hands from the knife as well. 50 stab wounds. With all that blood, the handle would be very slippery. The perpetrator would have cuts on their hand. If it was Emma, wouldn't her DNA be there too? I don't know, warriors. It always makes good sense to look at the victim's partner first, but Emma just doesn't seem like a viable suspect to me, I'm afraid. There have been other details in the case that have been brought public. When the killer wrote FAT on Katie's upper torso, Katie was still alive. She was also alive for most of the torture. The coroner was able to determine this because her blood hemorrhaging is ante-mortem, meaning that the injuries occurred before death. A forensic investigator weighed in on the case and said it looked like the killer took time to pull Katie's pants down and write on her. They were in no hurry, and there's a possibility the killer knew what they were doing with a medical instrument, or perhaps they had a multi-edged tool with them. This former investigator also said that the killer would have been drenched in blood, and took a lot more time than necessary to kill Katie. Here is where members of the public are guessing about Katie's body parts that are missing. They said it would require a saw or an extremely sharp knife to get through both skin and bone. They're saying she obviously was dumped in the park after being killed. I don't know if I believe that. Maybe pulled into shrubbery and murdered, but I really think she was killed in that park. Both the general public and law enforcement speculate Bowie did not attack the attacker. This leads many to think it was someone Katie and Bowie knew, like Emma. I'm not sure how we know Bowie didn't attack. Emma's dad believes there was DNA in Bowie's mouth, which would mean he bit the assailant, right? If this is true, law enforcement might be keeping some of the information close to their vests and not sharing it. A forensic psychologist believes the overkill, the sexual targeting, and the mutilation are common to a murderer who is a sadist. The act of carving the letters on a human body fulfilled some emotional need that the killer had. Katie could have even looked like someone the killer might have known, so the killer would harbor resentment towards Katie. It really could have been anyone, except you and me, because we're not criminals. There are also some coinkydinks between the case of Katie Janness and another murder that happened at Piedmont Park back on May 28, 2009. A 43-year-old gay black man named Patrick Bolin was stabbed to death in the park. His is a cold case, and unfortunately Patrick was blamed by law enforcement for his own murder. They said he was most likely soliciting sex, and that's why he was murdered. What the fuck? You never blame a victim for their own death. And law enforcement doing this? That's just crap. Within 24 hours of Patrick Bolin's murder, another man was stabbed to death in Midtown Atlanta. But all that's not the coinkydink part. This is, around the same time of Katie's murder, another woman was murdered in a different park just to the east of Atlanta. This woman was an 18-year-old black woman named Tory Lang, and she had been shot in Yellow River Park. But Tory Lang's alleged killer was her best friend, 20-year-old Austin Ford. In Katie's case, investigators are thinking it was potentially someone Katie knew. A stranger-to-stranger attack and murder seems unlikely to them. Katie's girlfriend Emma is perplexed. She can't think of any reason as to why anyone would target Katie. Katie was very well loved in the community. To be honest, I'm not sure if detectives believe Katie knew her killer because Bowie didn't attack the assailant, or because of the 50-plus stab wounds. No one's saying. The former prosecutor of the county that Piedmont Park is in believes the reaction of Bowie is noteworthy. The assailant killed the pet as well, and a characteristic of a pit bull breed is to be very protective of their owner. And yet, the killer apparently was able to get close enough to disable the dog before killing Katie. To them, it suggests Bowie knew the attacker. Okay, but here's the thing with that. Dogs have as different a personalities as people. My pit bull in Hawaii, he looked like he could rip your head off. But he never met anyone he didn't like and lovingly licked everyone, and he wagged at everyone all the time. If you had a car, that dog wanted to go home with you. He didn't care who you were. as long as you drove him somewhere, preferably to his next bowl of food. Maybe Bowie was like my pit in Hawaii and just loved everyone. The FBI has since joined Katie's case. It's not a cold case in spite of it happening a year and a half ago. Law enforcement officials in the FBI promise that they're close to solving it. And if they truly are, they're not sharing any more than that. We don't know if they have any persons of interest or suspects. And until someone is arrested and put on trial, we will have no unicorn justice for Katie Janness. There are no new updates that have been made public as of now, January of 2023. But the 9 cameras that were out in Piedmont Park have all since been fixed. Atlanta police have asked people not to go to Piedmont Park at night, not until they have a killer in custody, and until they've added a few extra patrols to the area. I don't know if they have, and I also don't know if anyone's following that rule. But as far as I know, they have not lifted the request. Rest in power, Katie. Our true crime quickie this episode comes to us from my old stomping grounds, Sacramento, California. It seems in 2007 I was absolutely oblivious to the problem my LGBTQ+ community was having with Christian Slavic people. Who knew? The Christian Slavic people were staging protests against LGBTQ members. On Saturday, July 1st, 2007, families and friends were out at Lake Natoma, which is a beautiful recreational area near the Folsom Dam and my personal favorite, the fish hatchery. These families spread out around the park and they were enjoying the gorgeous warm day, swimming in the lake, having barbecues, getting their drink on, and eating yummy food. One of these groups of family and friends were Christian Slavic. And by Christian Slavic, I'm really referring to Eastern European. People from Russia, to be precise. Somewhat near them was an East Indian group of Sikh people, along with some of their Fijian friends. They were also enjoying themselves with plenty of food, music, and even dancing. As the day turned into late afternoon and then into evening, people were still at the park, including the Christian Slavic group and the East Indian Sikh group. We here in America have something called daylight savings, and most people don't really like it. But it allows the day to stay much longer in the summer, so it doesn't usually get dark until about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. One of the Sikh men, 26-year-old Satendar Singh, he was having so much fun with his family and friends. He didn't bring a date or a spouse like the other members of his party. But he was dancing to the East Indian music with both the women and the men, and he was just enjoying their company. Satendar was a gay man. His mom and dad lived in Fiji, but he had his aunt and uncle for support in Sacramento. I'm not sure if maybe Satendar showed effeminate tendencies in the way he carried himself, or maybe the way he danced. I don't know what it was. But a few of the Russian men came over to Satendar and to the family's picnic site. The Russian men automatically assumed Satendar was gay due to him dancing with both the men and women. Those same Russian men then started a verbal altercation with Satendar. They called him homophobic and racial slurs. The Russian men sent their families home and they called for reinforcements. Soon another group of Russian men arrived. The East Indian Sikh Fiji party tried to gather all their belongings and leave, but their way was being blocked by the new group of Russian men. Satendar was struck and knocked to the ground by one of the men. Satendar was unconscious, and the Russian men walked away towards the parking lot, hurling bottles at the East Indian Fijian party as they left. 911 was called. An ambulance and the sheriff arrived. This was around 9 p.m. The ambulance took Satendar to San Juan Mercy Hospital, and the sheriff was there to investigate the disturbance call. Satendar had a massive brain injury, and he was hooked up to a life support machine to keep him alive. 4 days later, Satendar wasn't getting any better. His parents could not afford the flight from Fiji to Sacramento to make the tough decision. The decision now fell on Satendar's aunt and uncle's shoulders, and since his chance of improving was slim to none, His aunt and uncle had the life support plug pulled. Satendar had only just recently, to 2007, immigrated to America. His family knew he was gay, but they loved and supported him no matter what. The irony of all of this, one set of immigrants to America attacking another set. It's just not right. On July 27th, 2 Christian Slavic men had warrants put out on them in relations to Satendar's murder. That would be Andrei Vucic and Alexander Shevchenko. Andrei is the one who threw the punch, knocking Satendar to the ground, causing him to hit head first into a concrete slab. Andrei's wife insisted Satendar was provoking her husband, and her husband was just acting in self-defense. Really, lady? Your jerk-off husband was the one who threw the life-ending punch and the first punch. He's the one that started the violence before he and the other guy, Alexander, ran off like the cowards they were. She proceeded to say her group were Christian. Children were present, and it wasn't right for their children to have to witness men dancing with men. I might be paraphrasing that part, but essentially that's what she said. Andrei then took flight back to Russia and the Ukraine to avoid prosecution, and he's on the FBI's wanted list. His buddy Alexander was charged with misdemeanor assault and disturbing the peace, and he's currently a free man legally immigrated to the United States. Rest in power, Satendar. Love you, Rainbow Warriors. Remember, you matter. And it's not a crime to be gay, unless you're a murderer.